Welcome back to another story on Echo Story. Before we begin, tell us where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. I had just gotten back from my 15-minute coffee break when I spotted something unusual. Two individuals in dark suits were standing by my workspace. Both had identification badges clipped to their belts, and each held a thin folder. One of them wore latex gloves and was rifling through my desk drawers as though I were under suspicion. The other was taking photographs of my computer screen, moving deliberately and carefully. My heart didn't pound. It sank into my stomach. Instantly, I understood what was happening. I approached, gripping my coffee cup, trying to keep my expression neutral. "Is something wrong?" I asked. The taller one straightened up. "Jessica Alvarez," he said. I nodded in response. "We're here for a compliance check," he stated in a practiced tone, the kind people use after repeating the same line countless times. "Based on an anonymous tip." Anonymous? Of course. I didn't need anyone to tell me who had made that report. Just 2 cubicles over, pretending to be absorbed in her work, was Chloe Sanders, the daughter of my boss. The same Chloe who had joined the company 3 months earlier. The same Chloe who made it painfully clear she believed my job should have been hers. I turned back to the officers and forced a composed smile. "Go ahead," I said, placing my coffee down. "You won't find anything." But even as the words left my mouth, my hands trembled slightly, not from guilt, but because I knew exactly how far Chloe was willing to go. Chloe and I had never gotten along. From her first day, she acted as if the office belonged to her and the rest of us were beneath her. She would interrupt meetings to clarify points I had already explained, usually getting them wrong. She casually dropped her father's name, reminding everyone who truly held the power. And I was the person standing between her and the promotion she felt entitled to. I had been with the company for 6 years. I knew the clients, the rules, and the systems inside out. My work wasn't flashy, but it was reliable, which was precisely why she resented me. Because you can't outshine someone who doesn't need to prove themselves. The officers continued their search in silence. They flipped through files, examined reports, and checked my desktop. Occasionally, they exchanged glances, those silent looks that make everyone around them uneasy. I crossed my arms and remained quiet. Inside, though, my mind was racing. This is it. She's finally done it. Chloe has convinced them I'm a risk. Months of whispers, fake concern, and mistakes blamed on me. She had been building up to this moment. I stole a glance in her direction. She was pretending to work on a spreadsheet, but her eyes kept darting up, watching. She wasn't even trying to hide it. I should have been furious. I should have felt humiliated as strangers went through my belongings. But instead I felt an unexpected calm, because Chloe had no idea what was about to happen to her. Before I tell you what came next, could you take a moment to leave a comment and let me know where you're reading this from? I love seeing how far these stories reach. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and turn on notifications. This story is about to get even more intense. The shorter officer pulled open my bottom drawer. He sorted through notebooks, pens, and a few personal items. Then his gloved hand paused. He took out a leather-bound folder, opened it, and frowned. "Jessica," he said slowly. "What is this?" I looked down at the file in his hands and my chest tightened. It wasn't mine. At least, it hadn't been yesterday. Inside were printed emails, notes written in handwriting that wasn't my own, and even screenshots of supposed errors. Errors that looked suspiciously like the ones Chloe had whispered about in recent weeks. My throat went dry, but I forced myself to breathe steadily. "That's not my file," I said. The taller officer raised his eyebrows. "It was in your drawer." I met his gaze directly. "And yet, it doesn't belong to me." Behind me, I heard the faintest noise, the creak of Chloe's chair as she shifted, trying to see. For a moment, the usual office sounds, the chatter, the ringing phones, the tapping of keyboards, seemed to fade away. It was just me, the officers, and the folder that could destroy my career. But then something unexpected happened. The officer kept flipping through the pages, his expression darkening. He showed a page to his partner. They exchanged quiet words, then looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. "Miss Alvarez," the shorter one said finally, "we need to speak with you in private." I nodded, steady as ever. Of course, because if they looked closely, they would see the truth, and when they did, Chloe's plan would unravel right in front of her. The compliance officers led me down the hall to one of the small, glass-walled meeting rooms. My coworkers watched as we passed, whispering behind their hands and pretending to be busy. I could almost hear the rumors spreading. "Jessica is under investigation." Compliance caught her in the act. Inside the room, they closed the blinds, sat across from me, and placed the folder on the table as if it were evidence in a trial. The taller officer cleared his throat. "Jessica, as part of this inspection, we're required to review any documents found at your workstation. Can you explain where this file came from?" I leaned back in my chair, forcing myself to stay calm. "I've never seen that folder before today." He raised an eyebrow. "It was found in your desk drawer." "I believe you," I said evenly, "but that doesn't make it mine." The shorter officer opened the folder. "These appear to be records of mistakes, policy violations, and misconduct. The notes are dated, initialed, and include supporting documents." He pulled out a page. "For example, an email to a client where you allegedly provided incorrect policy details." My stomach tightened. I remembered that email, except I had caught the error before sending it. I had rewritten it, and resent the correct version within 10 minutes. The incorrect draft had never left my inbox. I looked the officer in the eye. "That's not the final email. That's a screenshot of an unsent draft." The two men exchanged a glance. For weeks, I had sensed Chloe circling, accidental bumps, into my desk when she walked by, casual comments about my bad memory in meetings, the way she hovered whenever I was typing, as if waiting for me to make a mistake. And now, here it was, her big move, a fabricated file of my supposed incompetence. Except Chloe had made one critical error. She thought I hadn't noticed how closely she had been watching me, but I had been watching her too. The officers asked me to go through the documents page by page. There were screenshots of spreadsheets with errors circled in red, but the versions in the folder weren't the final ones. The corrected files were still on the company's shared drive, complete with my digital signature and timestamp. There were printouts of emails with typos or incorrect dates, but every single one had a follow-up correction, also time-stamped and logged. And then there were handwritten notes, pages of them. They described me as chronically late, unprofessional, and careless with client information. The handwriting was neat and looping, like a teenager's diary, not mine. I pointed to the notes. "Do you have handwriting samples on file?" The taller officer gave me a measured look. "Why?" "Because anyone who has worked here longer than a week knows I print in block letters. Always. It's in my HR file. That's not my writing." He jotted down a note. After nearly an hour, they leaned back in their chairs. The shorter officer tapped the folder. "Jessica, do you have any idea who might want to create this kind of documentation about you?" I hesitated, just long enough to make it seem like I was reluctant. Then I sighed. I don't want to make accusations without proof. But Chloe Sanders has made it clear she wants my position. She also has access to my desk. Everyone does. The drawers don't lock. They didn't respond immediately, but the way they exchanged glances told me the name wasn't unfamiliar. Back at my cubicle, Chloe was waiting. She wasn't looking directly at me, but I could feel her smug satisfaction. She was certain she had won. I sat down, turned on my monitor, and acted as if nothing had happened. Inside, though, I was thinking 3 steps ahead, because Chloe had underestimated me. She thought I was the type who would panic, deny everything, or even lash out. But the truth was, I had been documenting things too. Not fake mistakes or fabricated notes, but subtle details, real events, the kind of things people overlook until it's too late. The officers might not have realized it yet, but they were, on the verge of uncovering something much bigger than a few forged emails. That evening, as I packed up to leave, Chloe passed by my desk. She stopped, leaned against the partition, and whispered so no one else could hear. "Rough day, Jessica." I looked up slowly. "Not as rough as yours will be." Her smile faltered for half a second, but she quickly recovered. "You'll see. People always find out who's really in charge." "Yeah," I said softly. "They do." When I got home, I opened my laptop and reviewed my own records. I hadn't planned it this way, but over the past year I had built an archive, not of mistakes, but of conversations, client feedback, performance reviews, and casual notes that painted a very different picture from the one Chloe was trying to create. And tucked among those files was something I hadn't needed until now, proof of Chloe's interference. Because 3 weeks earlier, I had caught her in my inbox. She had accidentally sent a client draft under my name, filled with errors, but the IT logs had captured her login session. I had saved the screenshot quietly, just in case. And now, just in case, had arrived. I closed my laptop and leaned back in my chair. Tomorrow the officers would return with more questions. They always did. And when they asked, I would be ready, because Chloe thought she was building a case against me. But what she didn't realize was that she had been writing her own downfall the entire time. The next morning I arrived at work earlier than usual. The office was still quiet, with only the hum of computers and the faint smell of stale coffee from the previous day. I wanted time to myself before the storm hit. But I didn't have long. At 9:12 sharp, the compliance officers returned. They stopped at my cubicle first. "Jessica, do you have a moment?" My co-workers looked up, curious. Some exchanged glances. Others kept their eyes down, pretending not to notice. I grabbed my notepad and followed the officers back to the same glass-walled meeting room as the day before. This time, there was another person waiting inside, Mr. Harrison, our department manager. His jaw was tight, his hands folded on the table. He looked like he hadn't slept. The taller officer began. "Jessica, thank you for your cooperation yesterday. We've been reviewing the documentation. Some things don't add up. We'd like to clarify a few details." He slid a page across. The table, the email screenshot Chloe had planted. "We checked the client records," the shorter officer said. "As you mentioned, the draft was never sent. The final version was clean. However, this printout clearly came from within the system." "Correct?" I said. "But it wasn't taken by me." Mr. Harrison leaned forward. "Do you have proof of that?" I opened my notepad, flipped to the page where I had written down dates and times, and slid it back across the table. 3 weeks ago, someone accessed my account from a workstation that wasn't mine. I flagged it and took screenshots before reporting it to support. The officers studied the page. Mr. Harrison frowned. "Who?" I didn't answer right away. My pen tapped lightly against the table. "You'll see the username in the log," I said finally. It wasn't mine. I didn't have to say the name. They would see it soon enough. Back at my desk, the atmosphere felt different. Conversations quieted when I walked past. People avoided eye contact. By noon, I understood why. "Jessica," my co-worker Maria whispered when she caught me in the hallway. "I need to tell you something." "Chloe's been talking." I stiffened. "Talking about what?" "She's saying you're under investigation for mishandling client information, that you've been falsifying records to cover up mistakes. She says compliance is close to proving it." I closed my eyes briefly. Chloe wasn't just relying on the planted folder. She was spreading rumors, creating doubt before the truth could come out. "Do people believe her?" I asked. Maria hesitated. "Some do. You know how she is. She makes it sound convincing." "Of course she does," I said. Chloe had inherited her father's charm, the same sharp smile, the same ability to twist a story into something believable. And unlike me, she didn't care who she hurt in the process. That afternoon, I noticed small changes. Emails from colleagues were shorter, almost cold. The friendly chatter in the break room quieted when I entered. Even the receptionist, who always greeted me warmly, only offered a polite nod. Chloe's lies were spreading. But I reminded myself, perception isn't reality. The officers weren't foolish. They had the logs. They had the handwriting samples. It was only a matter of time before everything fell into place. Still, that didn't make the waiting any easier. At 3:45, the compliance officers returned. This time, they didn't ask me to leave my desk. They asked Chloe. Her face paled, but she smiled tightly and followed them into the meeting room. The entire office pretended not to watch, but everyone did. Heads tilted, fingers paused over keyboards. Even Mr. Harrison stood outside his office, arms crossed, watching her. Through the blinds, I caught glimpses, Chloe gesturing with her hands, talking quickly. One officer taking notes, while the other kept his eyes locked on her, her confidence slipping with every passing minute. 30 minutes passed, then 40. At 50 minutes, the door opened. Chloe walked out, her eyes red, her jaw clenched. She didn't look at anyone as she marched back to her desk. The officers didn't say a word. They went straight to Mr. Harrison's office instead. For the rest of the day, Chloe barely moved. She typed furiously, but her hands shook. Every so often, she glanced my way, her expression a mix of anger and panic. And I realized something important. She still thought she could win. She thought this was just a temporary setback, that if she pushed harder and spread more rumors, she could still convince everyone I was the villain. But the more she tried, the clearer the contrast became. Her noise versus my silence. Her rumors versus my record. Her chaos versus my calm. As I packed my bag that evening, Mr. Harrison stopped by my desk. He lowered his voice. "Jessica, keep doing your job. Don't engage. Understood?" I nodded. But inside, I knew it wasn't enough to just survive this. Chloe had crossed a line. She hadn't just tried to take my job. She had tried to destroy my name, my reputation, everything I had built in 6 years. And if she thought I was going to let that go, she didn't know me at all. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open. I organized the files I had saved, IT logs, client testimonials, performance reviews, even casual emails where Chloe had overstepped. Piece by piece, the puzzle was coming together. I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was preparing to expose her. By 8:31, a calendar invitation appeared in my inbox. Compliance review. Attendance required. Location, conference room B. Attendees, the 2 officers, Miss Patel from HR, Mr. Harrison, and, optionally, Chloe Sanders. Optional. Right. I printed nothing, brought only a notepad, and walked in exactly on time. The blinds were half closed. The table was too clean. Everyone had that stiff posture people adopt when they've decided not to make small talk. The taller officer started. "Jessica, thanks for coming. We've reviewed the documents found at your workstation and compared them to system records." His tone was neutral, but his jaw worked as if he were chewing on a problem he didn't like. Miss Patel nodded. "We'll go through the key points, and then take questions." I folded my hands and waited. The shorter officer slid a page toward me. First, the email error that appeared in the folder. "Server logs confirm your draft wasn't sent. The version in the client thread matches your corrected copy." He tapped the margin. "This checks out." He placed a second page on top of the first. Second, access logs. At 5:46 p.m., 3 weeks ago, your account was opened from Workstation 4C while you were badged out of the building at 5:28 p.m. Mr. Harrison looked at me. "You were off-site?" "Yes, I said. Jim, the badge log will show I didn't return. Miss Patel glanced at the taller officer. He slid over a printed table. Security confirmed the badge. We also pulled camera stills from 5:44 to 5:49 p.m. He turned the page so I could see. The grainy image showed my row of cubicles, a figure in a camel coat, head down, hands in my drawer. Even in low resolution, the profile was unmistakable. Chloe's eyes flicked to the photo and away again. That's not... You can't tell who that is. The shorter officer didn't argue. He placed a new sheet on the stack. Third, print server logs. The hard copies in the folder were produced on the Konica Minolta 2E at 6:02 p.m., the same day. Job owner, C. Sanders. Silence filled the room. Even the air vent seemed loud. Chloe let out a breathy laugh. We all print under shared codes. Anyone could have done it. It wasn't a shared queue, the taller officer said quietly. It required a network login. The job metadata includes the user hash. He looked at her, then at Miss Patel. We verified it with IT. Mr. Harrison sat back. His face paled slightly. Where is Mr. Sanders in all this? He asked carefully. He's Chloe's father and her skip-level manager, Miss Patel replied. He was copied on the initial anonymous complaint. He has been recused, as of this morning. That should have happened from the beginning. She didn't look at Chloe when she said it. She didn't need to. I kept breathing. Steady in, steady out. I could feel the weight in the room shifting, like a table finally settling on all four legs. The shorter officer continued. We also compared the handwritten notes in the folder to samples from personnel files. They don't match yours. They do, however, match a training form initialed by Miss Sanders during onboarding. The slant, the looped G's, the open A's. I was documenting concerns, Chloe cut in, her voice sharp. Whistleblowing is encouraged here, right? Or do we punish people for caring about standards? Miss Patel folded her hands. Whistleblowing is protected. Fabrication is not. Chloe's jaw twitched. I didn't fabricate anything. She's careless. Everyone knows it. I was helping. Mr. Harrison looked at me, then back at Chloe. We don't know that. I opened my notepad and slid a color printout toward the officers. There's one more thing. My voice surprised me with how calm it sounded. 3 weeks ago, a client draft was sent under my name with multiple errors. I caught it and resubmitted the correct version. I traced the origin to CSDS on Workstation 5B during my lunch hour. I reported it to support but asked them not to escalate unless it became a pattern. The taller officer scanned the printout, then pulled a second copy from his folder, as if he'd already seen it. We have this. Thank you. Chloe gripped the edge of the table. You can't prove intent. People ask for help all the time. I was helping. Jessica leaves things half-finished. Intent is precisely what we're establishing, Miss Patel said, still calm. We're also addressing process failures, including the lack of early recusal for your father. Chloe's head snapped toward her. He did nothing wrong. Miss Patel didn't blink. That's why it's called a recusal, to protect all parties. The taller officer pushed the planted folder away, as if it were something that might spill. Jessica, do you have anything else you want to add? I thought about everything. The quiet corrections, the clipped emails, the way. Conversation stopped when I walked into the break room. I thought about my co-workers who didn't look up, and Maria whispering, "She makes it sound convincing." I want to keep doing my job, I said. I want my name to mean the same thing it meant last month. No one spoke for several seconds. Then Miss Patel closed her notebook. Here's what happens next. Jessica, you'll return to your full duties. We'll remove any flags or holds on your accounts. Chloe, you are placed on administrative leave with pay, effective immediately, while we complete our review. You are not to access company systems or premises without HR approval. Chloe's mouth fell open. You're suspending me based on a printer log. a fuzzy photo. "We're suspending you based on a pattern," Ms. Patel said. "The documents, the access logs, the timing, and the conflict of interest concerns. We need to do this properly." Chloe turned to Mr. Harrison, as if he might intervene and change everything. "Say something." He looked tired, older. "Compliance is handling this. I'm staying out of it, like I should have from the start." The shorter officer gathered the papers. He paused, then looked up at me. "We'll likely have more questions, but the core issues are clear." As we stood, the taller officer added almost gently, "For what it's worth, we don't like being used. When we realized the print jobs were tied to a complainant's account," he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. I stepped into the hallway and let the hum of the office surround me. The keyboards, the phones, the distant clatter of the mail cart. Maria was near the copier. Our eyes met. She didn't say anything. She just nodded once, slowly, as if we were finally standing on the same ground again. At my desk, my monitor displayed the client dashboard. No red banners, no holds. The ordinary grid of names and renewal dates looked almost beautiful. A minute later, security appeared at Chloe's cubicle with Ms. Patel. They spoke quietly. Chloe handed over her badge and laptop, her movements jerky, as if she couldn't quite believe what was happening. She didn't look at me. She walked out without drama, just a tight line where her smile should have been. The office didn't cheer. No one clapped. That isn't how real life works. People stared at their screens, typed, and pretended not to notice what they were noticing. I took a breath and opened the next client file. This wasn't over. Administrative leave wasn't a verdict. Policies take time. Processes have to be followed. Endings aren't clean lines on a calendar. But for the first time in weeks, I felt the ground steady beneath my feet, and then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Internal extension. Jessica. The voice was firm, unfamiliar. "This is Elaine Mercer, Director of Compliance. I'd like to meet with you privately this afternoon. There's something you should see. It concerns Mr. Sanders." I stared at the receiver, the cursor blinking on my screen. "Of course," I said. "Send the invite. I'll be there at 3 p.m. Sharp. I walked into the 12th floor conference room. The skyline stretched behind the glass like a painted backdrop, the city buzzing far below. Inside sat Elaine Mercer, the Director of Compliance. I had only seen her twice before, both times, in company-wide meetings. She carried herself like someone who didn't need to raise her voice to be heard. "Jessica," she said, gesturing to a chair. "Thank you for coming on such short notice." Her tone was calm, but the folder in front of her was thick, too thick. The door shut behind me with a soft click. Elaine flipped the folder open. "We've concluded the initial review of the documents planted in your desk. You should know Chloe's actions weren't isolated. They were supported, directly or indirectly, by her father." I blinked. "Mr. Sanders?" "Yes." Elaine slid a paper across the table. It was an email thread, heavily redacted but clear enough. The anonymous complaint had originated from his account. He had blind copied Chloe. He had coached her on the wording, even suggested attaching the evidence she had compiled. My stomach twisted. So the anonymous report hadn't been anonymous at all. Elaine nodded. "Exactly. Normally we encourage employees to raise concerns, but anonymity doesn't mean immunity. Using the process to settle personal scores, that's an abuse of the system." I stared at the page. 6 years I had worked here. 6 years of clean reviews, loyal clients, late nights ensuring nothing slipped through. And my boss had decided his daughter's ambition mattered more than my career. Elaine continued, "Here's what happens next. Chloe remains on administrative leave while HR completes a formal review. Her father has been placed on interim suspension pending the outcome. Compliance will recommend escalation to the board. I exhaled slowly, barely believing what I was hearing. She leaned forward. Jessica, your record is impeccable. More than impeccable. Client satisfaction scores, system logs, peer feedback, everything points to consistent professional performance. You are not under investigation. Do you understand? For the first time in days, my chest loosened. Yes, I said quietly. Good. She closed the folder and placed both hands on it. Now, I need to ask you something. What do you want? Moving forward, the question caught me off guard. What did I want? My first instinct was simple: to keep my job, to return to my desk, to my routine, to the safety of normalcy. But normal was gone. Chloe had made sure of that. I want my work to speak for itself, I said finally, and I don't want to look over my shoulder wondering who's waiting to sabotage me next. Elaine studied me for a moment. Then she nodded. Fair. Back at my desk, the office felt different. People weren't avoiding me anymore. Maria stopped by with a smile that looked more like an apology. Daniel from finance dropped off a file and lingered, asking how I was holding up. The tide had turned. Chloe's cubicle was empty, her chair pushed in neatly. Her father's office, the corner one with the view, sat dark. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to breathe. 2 weeks later, the official announcement went out. Effective immediately, Mr. Sanders has stepped down as department head. Chloe Sanders is no longer employed with the company. The email was short and clinical, but the shockwave rippled through every floor. People whispered in the break rooms, speculating about what had really happened. I didn't add to the rumors. I didn't need to. The truth was already in the files, in the logs, in the handwriting that wasn't mine. That Friday, Mr. Harrison called me into his office. He looked tired, older than I remembered, but his voice was steady. Jessica, I owe you an apology, he said. I should have protected you sooner. I should have questioned what was happening instead of letting it play out. I let politics cloud my judgment. I didn't say anything. Sometimes silence is the only honest response. He cleared his throat. The board approved my recommendation. Effective Monday, you'll be promoted to senior account manager. Full control of the client portfolio. I blinked. You're serious? He nodded. You earned it long ago. This company needs people who build trust, not tear it down. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table, the promotion letter in front of me. The city lights shimmered outside my window. I thought about everything. Chloe's whispers, her smug smile, the way she had leaned against my cubicle with false confidence. I thought about her father, about how he had chosen family over fairness. And I thought about the compliance officers' faces when the truth came out. They hadn't just discovered planted evidence. They had discovered what envy looks like when it turns into sabotage. Here's the part no one tells you. Revenge in real life doesn't look like fireworks. It doesn't look like public humiliation or dramatic speeches. It looks like a folder, closed quietly on a conference room table. It looks like an empty cubicle on Monday morning. It looks like people slowly realizing who you really were all along. I still walk past Chloe's old desk every day. It remains empty, waiting for a new hire. But for me, it's a reminder that no matter how carefully someone plots against you, the truth always leaves a trail.